The Next Breast Thing podcast is primarily funded by the American Society of Breast Surgeons. The support of sponsorships helps us offset some production costs. ASBRS does not endorse or co-promote any company, product, or service mentioned.
This episode of The Next Breast Thing is made possible in part through the generous support of Solventum Prevena Therapy and Mammotome Breast Cancer Diagnostics and Surgical Solutions.
Solventum Prevena Therapy has demonstrated a significant reduction in surgical site complications, infections, and readmissions. Take a proactive risk management approach. With Prevena Therapy, learn more at Prevena.com. That's Prevena.com.
At Mammotome, we offer a comprehensive range of products that deliver better outcomes in breast care. From biopsy to surgery, our advanced technologies empower clinicians with precise, trusted solutions. Together, we will transform the future of breast care. Learn more at Mammotome.com.
Hey listeners, want us to let you know when new episodes are available? Simply hit the subscribe or follow button on the Next Breast Thing podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also, join the conversation on our Facebook group by searching the Next Breast Thing podcast group on Facebook.
On this episode of The Next Breast Thing,
Is it possible to truly disconnect as a breast surgeon?
in the beginning of practice, you're trying to get your name out there, you're trying to grow.
I was in Cairo on vacation many years ago and took a call from a patient.
Think about all the health things they talk about disconnecting from your phone. And I think
What ways can your office contact you?
you see a new patient on a Monday and you order an MRI. You're going away on vacation, you're going to Europe. We've got 3 generations represented here.
I'm going to go full devil's advocate on us here because I think we're not better surgeons than we used to be.
He so badly told his daughter not to go into medicine. I mean, he was so bitter about his job and always being on call and was never there for his family, slept in his office.
I don't have great hobbies. I'm trying out a whole bunch of new ones, all of which have failed me.
Are there other things that you do to keep your mind off of your practice? Or this is Carla,
Ellie,
Michael.
Susie,
and Susan. Welcome to The Next Breast Thing, a podcast by the American Society of Breast Surgeons for the entire breast community,
we're a group of devoted surgeons from different parts of the country.
inviting you to journey with us into the science of breast.
Through the heart and soul of our breast community.
From advances in procedures and patient care to personal transformation, we're here to support you.
So, if you're part of the breast community and can't seem to find the answers, this is the Next Breast Thing.
Is it possible to truly disconnect? Should we? I mean, as a breast surgeon, is that something that we should be doing? And that's our topic for today. Before we get started, let's begin with some personal and professional updates. Carla, are you off vacation finally?
It's been a vacation-heavy springtime. We got spring break. I just got back from the Keys, and in reference to my prior discussion, this was a step away from work where I stayed plugged in. So spent some time with my parents down there. But I'll tell you what I'm excited about. I'm in Indy, and so we've got a pretty big event happening this weekend, and I've got tickets to go see some Final Four basketball. So I'm really looking forward to the games and kind of the vibe of the city.
Last time it was in Indy, Baylor won the national championship. So little tidbit for you there.
Ellie, what about you? Any trips or new purchases, house purchases recently?
No, I did just file my taxes. Just so exciting over here. But the real estate move does, in fact, work. That was a sigh of relief. I thought I'd been scammed initially, but I did my tax return with my accountant. It all went through. And so, yeah, now we're just looking at buying another property. But my update is our hospital actually went through an SABP accreditation site visit. And, you know, as a newer surgeon, I've never really been part of any of the accreditation for those different designations. I had no idea how much paperwork goes into that. And there was like a binder that was 2 inches thick. It was a lot of work to get all that together, but I learned a lot about how many people you need to help you achieve those goals. So it was a cool learning experience. And I saw how the sausage was made for those things. And it's a lot of work, but good learning experience. So Michael, what about you? What's going on at the farm?
Well, I told you that fishing wasn't going so well, and I think it's a problem because I'm fishing from the bank. So I found a boat shoved off into the trees at my farm. So I'm going to launch that baby. I'm going to smash a bottle of champagne or a box of wine off the front of it. We're going to launch it, and I'm going to then try to fish this weekend from a boat.
Are you fishing in a pond?
It is a pond.
Okay.
I've got those little orange floaty things that you wear. I'm going to wear those and get out there and see if fishing in the middle of the water is better than fishing from the bank where I'm worried about snakes.
I fished a lot growing up and you kind of go in the middle.
Okay, well, there we go. All right, we'll tell you how the launch goes.
For some people, it's exciting. For other people, I don't really get it. Is that your way to disconnect?
No, I've got a pond and I have a fishing pole. So I figure that I got to connect those dots somewhere.
Do you stock your pond?
It is stocked. I didn't do it. I bought it stocked. This is the most low maintenance operation that I do. I just bought this stuff and we're going to see what happens. It's kind of a disaster. My wife still didn't know why we did this, but let's move on to our topic. Is it possible to truly disconnect as a breast surgeon? As breast surgeons, we carry not only the technical responsibility of care, but also the emotional weight of our patient's journey. With continuous access through EMRs, patient portals, and Teams communications, the line between work and personal time has become increasingly blurred. Today, we're asking an honest question. Is true disconnection realistic in our field of breast surgery? Or is the goal really about sustainable engagement, boundaries, and recovery? Our goal is to share some practical strategies, challenges, and mindsets around protecting our time and ourselves while still delivering high-quality patient care. Who wants to get this started?
Well, I have a question for both of you first. What ways can your office contact you? Is it just a phone call? Is it email? Is there Epic chat or Cerner chat, whatever else you have?
We don't have Epic, but I think a lot of people who do, that's how they're contacted. We have a secure text messaging app that we use. And so that's where all patient questions go through. And I will tell you that that's one of the first things that I shut off when I go on vacation.
We also don't have Epic, and we do have secure texting, and I get texts, I get phone calls if I don't answer my text, and then if the answering service calls, I answer that as well.
So you answer your calls at night too?
I do. And that's what I found for me. It's just easier for me to answer the call of a patient that I know than kicking it over to somebody that they don't know, and I can usually answer that question myself pretty quickly, and patients really don't abuse that. They don't call that frequently. If you do a lot of legwork in the clinic, usually they're prepped for what they're encountering and they usually don't abuse that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question when we start the discussion about disconnecting, because you've got to figure out what your practice is going to look like. We have a big academic practice and we cover 5-6 hospitals. So during the week, we're supposed to cover all of our own calls. And for the most part, that's how it works because it does depend on how it gets routed. But on the weekends, the person on call covers. So you won't get a patient phone call on the weekend.
So like your breast group rotates between taking call?
Yeah. So we have stuff that comes in through the ER or other new patients. And if you're on call that week, so we also take call for a week at a time. Michael, I'm sure you're probably on call kind of most of the time for your own patients, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And maybe get coverage when you go away. What about you, Ellie? How does that look?
We really all cover our own patients, and we have a good system with our ER where they're really routing a lot of any emergent things through the ACS service. And then if they need to follow up with us in the clinic or get an aspiration, they do that the next day. But yeah, we all kind of cover our own patients. And then if I'm going out of town, I will have another colleague cover me for any blood emergencies, but I do typically answer the simple questions like Michael's talking about because, like he said, it's easier for me to answer than having someone else try and kind of poke around and figure out the right answer.
And we've got the added bonus that we don't have ER call. So, it's easier for me that I don't have to pick up and go in and see somebody. And the person happiest with that were our fellows. The calls that we're getting are the calls on our patients for the most part.
I would think that that really sets you up for some difficulty disconnecting. I mean, I'm all for patient continuity and knowing a lot about your patients, but I do think there's this sense that you are constantly on call. And it may not be an emergent operation in the middle of the night, but it means that you constantly have to be ready to have your phone with you. You can't shut that off or put that in another room. I mean, think about all the health things they talk about disconnecting from your phone. And I think that you have to be able to do that as a person these days, and you truly can't if you're always on call.
I was in Cairo on vacation many years ago and took a call from a patient. And she thinks she's calling me in the middle of the night, and it's in the middle of the day, but I took that call. It was easy, and we moved on. And I'm like Ellie, when I'm out of town, if there's something that is pressing, that I've arranged for someone to cover that. If somebody has something that I've operated on and there's bleeding or something like that, they're covered. But even there, I don't turn my phone off, which can be a little stressful, but for the most part, I might go 2 weeks without getting a call. After having done general surgery for 5 years, I could do almost anything, is kind of my mindset.
Let me ask you about this then, because we all have new patients that we're seeing in different studies being ordered at different times. So let's say you see a new patient on a Monday and it's a young patient with dense breasts and you order an MRI. You're going away on vacation. You're going to Europe next week. You're going to leave on a Saturday, come back the following Sunday, and your patient's getting an MRI on Monday. So for me, if I'm there, I want to go over those results with the patient Monday night, Tuesday. We're making decisions based on that. If I'm in Europe having a wine tour or swimming in the Caribbean, sailing, I don't know. It's not that I don't want to follow up on those things, but that feels like a pretty intense conversation. I mean, sometimes you're saying, hey, there's something in your contralateral breast. Oh my gosh, your lymph nodes are enlarged. We need to get a biopsy. So what I will do in those situations is I usually have a pretty good idea of who's got tests that are coming up, and I will send my APP or whoever's covering, so-and-so is getting an MRI on Monday. Please call her. If there are questions about what is being seen, send me an email or send me a text, because when you're going places, I can kind of get my text. And then I will go and look at that, and I'm happy to kind of engage. But to kind of be on call to look over those things, I have my APP follow up on pathology. I'm operating this week and I'm going away next week. Here are the surgeries that I had. If these things are pretty straightforward, please call the patients. If there are questions, send it to me. So how do you guys handle those things?
I do something similar to you where my MRIs, they're all getting them before they see me. That's usually not happening. Second thing, yes, I do the same thing. So I know who's pending a biopsy. That doesn't mean that all the biopsies are done when they see me. There probably is something that the MRI pulled up that we have to get a biopsy on. So the first thing I do is I tell the patient, these are the two scenarios. If it's this criteria, I'm going to resect it. If it's not, I'm not going to resect it. I talk to my nurse practitioner or the PA about this and have them call about it too. So just like you're talking about, Carla. And so those issues aren't necessarily what I'm getting called about. What, at least in my practice, happens is a lot of the other physicians reach out to me. It's not necessarily the patient questions. It's the radiologist just looked back at the imaging and they decided they want to do my localization under ultrasound. Is that okay with me? And I've said to them a million times, these are the ways I like it localized, like please put whatever here. But still, the other physicians often reach out to me. And those are the ones that I really feel guilty about not responding to, or being like, I'll get back to you in a week or whatever. We have like a separate secure text system that's just for the physicians. And what I need to do is probably just take that off my home screen, but I just cannot. As a young surgeon, I have all this mind drama that I need to be ever present, available. I don't know if that ever goes away, but especially in the beginning of practice, you're trying to get your name out there, you're trying to grow, you're trying to be a good referral source. So that's where I struggle, is when the other physicians contact me. You know, maybe they'll forget in a week. It's on the top of their mind right then, and I just feel guilty about not responding.
It's limited for me. I mean, if they will call me directly or whatever else, I'll listen to the voicemail, then I'll let the nurse or APP know, hey, can you give them a call? Tell them I'm out. handle this as best you can. They kind of know what I want. And it sort of gives me a little bit of that buffer. They usually don't have direct access to me unless they've got my cell phone number, which a lot of them do. But I'm not on a system like yours where that's how you communicate and everybody is just assuming that everybody's there. That would be a little taxing for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go full devil's advocate on us here because I think we're not better surgeons than we used to be. Now, here's what I'm going to say. When I was trained originally, this was my patient. And if I'm post-call, patient's doing poorly, that's still my patient. That patient is my responsibility. Then comes the 80-hour work week, and now comes shift docking where I'm off. And I watched this happen when my father was in the hospital recently. Nobody's making a decision. Everybody's sort of doing their shift, temporizing until they pass it off to the next shift worker. I feel like this generation, and I'm going to talk about you whippersnappers, doesn't have the ownership of the patients that I feel like we had. Now, it's to my detriment, right? Because I'm on call all the time. So tell me how you feel like you have that same ownership when you can pass it off or do shift work or things like that.
We've got 3 generations represented here.
Well, I was lumping you with Ellie and being in the 20s.
I'm Gen X proud, baby. That's a big question. And I think it's important for breast surgeons, but I think for physicians overall. Shift work is here to stay. It's not going to change. So I think it is something we can discuss, but it's not going to change. And we have to just figure out how to work with it. I believe that the way I see patients and treat patients, they feel like my own patients. Now, of course, we're talking about very different scenarios than being a general surgery resident. So I was a general surgery resident a couple years after the 80-hour work week. And I think that's where it's kind of felt the most. And the people who are general surgery residents now, they don't know any differently. And I think that they probably do it better than if you tried to do it, Michael, not because you can't do it, but just everybody was sort of trained during a different period. On some level, I think patients do understand that. And I don't know that we're better surgeons or doctors now, Michael, but we're different in ways that maybe we aren't as good as having one doctor or surgeon take care of you all the time. We know that those people got really burnt out. I mean, you talked about your dad being a GYN doctor. We talked to somebody recently whose father was a GYN doctor, and she said he so badly told his daughter not to go into medicine. I mean, he was so bitter about his job and always being on call and was never there for his family, slept in his office. And so there's a reason why we sort of created these things, but there are ways to make your patients feel connected and that you are their surgeon while not being on call 24/7. And I do believe that patients understand that for the most part. There's always exceptions.
Well, and I was most recently in my general surgery residency, and I do agree with you, Michael. When I was a resident, it was shift work, and I didn't necessarily feel super responsible for my patients the way that I do now. So I think there was a bigger shift going into being an attending where it's like, wait, this is all on me now. I don't have anyone else to kick this down the road to. And so that might be why I'm having a really hard time disconnecting and setting more boundaries, setting up those systems, because it is a little bit of a newer sensation. And I do take extreme ownership in my patients now. And my partners are wonderful, but I still feel completely responsible for that patient. I don't know that it's better or worse than the way that it was before. I mean, we definitely got in less car accidents, driving, sleep deprived, but it's different. I think it hits you later because, of course, you're going to feel ownership for your patients after you get out. It is all you, but I don't know. I guess as a resident, maybe it would be easier if I felt that earlier. I'd be able to disconnect more now.
Vacation needs to be vacation, right? But do you guys turn your phones off at night?
That's the thing. We can't. I think there is a disconnection of vacation, but you're right. There's also a disconnection of, can you leave work and kind of leave it behind? So what are the things that you do? So we've kind of established that we're a little attached to our phones, which is probably most of the people in this country. Fishing, I would think, is a way for you to disconnect, Michael. I mean, are there other things that you do to keep your mind off of your practice or being the president of the American Society of Breast Surgeons?
I don't have great hobbies. I'm trying out a whole bunch of new ones, all of which have failed me, except for maybe lumberjacking. I'll watch ball games when they're on and things like that. But no, I never could play golf because I never felt like I could take 5 hours off and get good at golf. And look, I'm third generation doc, so I just watch this over and over and over. This is the life that you've chosen, and this is what it's going to be like. And you should have known that going into it. So I'm not good at disconnecting, and I'm not good at having hobbies or doing any of those things because my life has been medicine, for better or worse.
I don't look at my phone for like the first, I'd say, hour of the morning. That's my little piece of quiet time. Of course, my alarm's on there. I do sleep by my bed, but I really don't look at it for the first hour. That's my little part of the day that I can protect. I make my coffee or whatever, try and read a book and write out like what I want to get done for the day. And I do think these things are made for us to be addicted to. So it's really challenging. And I notice that my willpower goes down the later and later in the day. So that's at least helped me a little bit.
I am probably not the worst with my phone, but I'm definitely not great. And when I wake up, I go right to my phone. I will tell you, the New York Times Games app, I'm about to delete it because they got me on Wordle, but I'm playing the mini crossword. I definitely kind of get into those things. So I think the 1 hour off your phone in the morning is great. And the other thing that you talked about, which is perfect, is that ability to say no to things weans during the day. And so it's much harder at night. I definitely tried to be off my phone in the evening before I'm going to bed and reading a book, but even that has gotten worse. So I think that's one of the hard things about what we do is that our phones are so important for keeping connected with work and different things. And yet that's also a part of it's distracting us as well.
We're in kind of a weird spot because let's face it, breast surgery is not bereft with emergency calls and a lot of stuff like that. So we sort of lull ourselves into believing that being on all the time is not that bad. Whereas if you are dealing with gunshot wounds all the time, you got to be off. We're in that weird spot where it's not real onerous. So we convince ourselves that, well, I'll just be on 24/7. And for the most part, it's okay. But there is never that full disconnect. You know, you can't go do something just absolutely crazy because you might get called and have to actually be coherent when you talk to somebody.
Well, and we also deal with some pretty difficult subject matters, whether we're dealing with a patient who's dying of their breast cancer or a patient who's having side effects. We've talked a lot about that. It can really weigh on our mental and emotional capacity. And so I think when we talk about all these different ways of disconnecting, I think I'm a big believer that we have to disconnect from some of that emotional stuff. I mean, you can engage and you have to, but you cannot be in that 100% of the time. As surgeons, we also talk about complications. And I think we started this podcast sort of discussing some of those different things. And that can be a really difficult thing to disconnect from.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're dealing with a tough patient situation or a tough administrative situation or difficult thing? Do you have a go-to that you're like, I need to disconnect. I'm going to jump on my boat and go fishing, or you can't turn your phone off. Cold plunge. I don't know.
Like, you've got all sorts of other things. No, I have all kinds of ways to distract myself. But no, it's usually I have to do something physical. I have to go run. I have to do a yoga class where you're not allowed to have your phone. Actually, something that's helped me a lot is journaling, which I never thought journaling would be important. But I remember when I got my first hematoma, I thought I was the worst surgeon in the world. That was just my brain saying, how could you do this? You should be perfect. How could you have a complication? And I called a mentor. And honestly, that's the best advice I have for anybody who's going through complications. Call a friend, because there is nothing more comforting than hearing somebody say, hey, the only surgeons who don't have complications don't operate. And just me hearing that, I was like, oh yeah, I knew that. I learned that as a general surgeon, but you forget it when you're beating yourself up and trying to be perfect. We're all taught to be perfect, but we're not, and complications happen. And so I remember writing out how I was feeling and then kind of changing the thought to not that I'm a bad surgeon, but that's the price of the game is complications. That just happens. And that really helped me process those things. What do you guys do?
Complications are rough. I had one that I caused, and she was in the hospital for about 2 months, and I went by every single day. I wasn't taking care of her in the hospital. I just went by to be seen. And they knew I caused it, and I knew I caused it, and I was there. And it was mostly for me, so she didn't feel that, hey, I did this and see you later. It was every day, and it was during the holidays, so it made it even a little bit more cumbersome. I'm not saying that's the right thing, but that's how I handled it. So me disconnecting from that was difficult for me. I owned it and dealt with it, probably not in a real healthy fashion, but it was a problem. So I wasn't able to disconnect from that.
I'm probably similar to you, Ellie. I definitely go towards physical things. And so running has always been a big thing. And I'm a huge advocate of yoga. I love yoga. You're not supposed to bring your phone in there. And I was in a yoga class a couple months ago, and they literally made an announcement at the beginning of class reminding people of that. And we were all in one of those poses where we're just sort of laying there and kind of vibing. And this woman's phone is ringing. And it was a very awkward moment. Yeah, it was annoying. But I was also trying to use my yogi meditation to kind of ignore it, but I'm not really good at that. I have tried meditating more. It kind of ebbs and flows, but I think that meditation is so important. And if you can meditate for 5-10 minutes a week just to start with something, that's probably healthy for all of us outside of medicine. But my gosh, that's 5 to 10 minutes of disconnecting.
In that little hour that I take away from my phone, I try to sit there for 5 minutes and just listen to my breath or do what you're talking about, the meditating. And I notice I am a different person when I do that versus when I'm not. My fuse is about this long, which is very short, versus when I meditate, I am just so much better.
I found death scrolling the news. It's just wonderful. I tried running, and then when I ran my marathon, I messed up my knees, and so now I can't run anymore. So run short distances.
Well, and you have animals, right, Michael? Like, that's honestly how I disconnect the most is I spend time with my animals, and they don't care what went on. That was my whole mental health regime in residency, was to just walk my dog, look at her tail wag, just little things like that.
I'm sure for some people in our career who have kids and young kids, they can both be a distraction in a helpful way, but also can be a difficult distraction, right? I mean, being a parent can be really stressful. And so you're going from one stressful situation to the next. And so we know that that's a big deal in our field and lots of fields, especially with young mothers. And we have a lot of people who are with children in our field. And I think that can be extra stressful. And so I think for those people, trying to find time to meditate and run and walk is even harder.
That is a really good point, in that one of the things that you really probably should do is force yourself to disconnect to be with your family. They're already paying a price for you being a physician, as much as that is, because that really tends to be what happens first. I've got to take care of this patient before I deal with you. We were a swim family, so we would sit in a chlorinated indoor space for 3 days at a time, which I'm sure didn't help my brain cells, but we would disconnect and we would travel and we would do that. And that was very purposeful. My phone was still on, but I certainly didn't sit around waiting for the next phone call. So we dedicated time to be with the family, and they got 99% of my attention.
That's great.
Have you just trained up your team to really not bother you guys? Do you have specific documents that say, call me for this? If there's a hematoma, you better call me. If there's a nipple necrosis, you better call me. Do you have those documents that you give your staff, or how do you guys have that set up?
I have other surgeons who are incredibly well qualified who cover. The big thing that I go over with my staff before I go on a vacation is you can reach out to me, or here are the ways to reach out to me. Because what I find is most of the time the staff doesn't want to bother you. My staff in general want to support me going away. Maybe they just don't want to talk to me for a week, but I want them to feel comfortable reaching out. And so I give them different ways. And fortunately, we have so many different ways of being contacted. But for me, email is a much softer way of being contacted versus we have diagnosed, and it is the worst sound in the world. And it's purposely like that, so it wakes me up in the middle of the night if it needs to. But that sound just takes me totally off of vacation. And so that is my least favorite way to be contacted if I need to be. And then you've got text as well. And I'm pretty selective about who gets my phone number.
your point of training up the staff is really key. I don't have any documents. They just sort of know by now what it is that I need to know about, and we'll anticipate a lot of things like you're talking about results coming back. And if they're normal, for the most part, they'll call them with the caveat that, well, Dr. Berry is going to review this, and if there's a change, we'll let you know. But I think it is important to train up the staff. And then what I will sometimes do when I'm on vacation is set up a short time every day or every other day for those things that need to be handled, that cannot be handled otherwise, that I'm going to be available for you for 15 minutes. Let's call at this time. Let's talk. Let's get it all hashed out. You can do that over the phone pretty quickly. Now I feel much more comfortable that I'm not going to get phone calls and texts and things like that. They've stacked it all up. They've dealt with it. And I'm able to move on really kind of without thinking about what's next.
That's a great recommendation, I think, for people who can't disconnect for various reasons, whether they don't want to or they can't. But that touch base with your staff once a day.
And they don't feel abandoned. They don't feel like they're having to make decisions that they don't feel capable of making, that there is going to be that point in time that they do get your undivided attention for a second. Pearls of wisdom you would recommend, Carla, that we can take with us for disconnecting.
Probably the most important thing I'd like our listeners to come away from this episode with is that it is important to disconnect. That is a very broad statement, and it can mean lots of different things. But I think as new surgeons, as experienced surgeons, you do have to evaluate what your ways of disconnecting, whether that's on a daily basis, that 1 hour in the morning is great, or when you're on vacation, how you disconnect. But if you can't identify how you disconnect, or it's once a year that you do that, that is not sustainable. And it does change throughout your career. So it actually worked out well that we've got the three of us here because we're sort of early, middle, and kind of late. And there's no doubt that it's different for me today than it was 15 years ago. But I think it is important to evaluate. We talked about those New Year's resolutions when we were doing the podcast a couple months ago. Every year for my New Year's resolution, I kind of think of a way that I'm disconnecting and that I'm going to continue to do things that are good for me.
Ellie.
A couple points really stuck out to me. One sad point that you brought up, Michael, is the family part and how our family really does pay a price for our careers and our jobs. And they do come second to a lot of this. And I don't think it can be emphasized enough how those are the most important parts of our lives. And why do we give the best at work and leave the people that love us the most the scraps? I need to remind myself that more and more, to use that disconnection time to be with your family, because they're ultimately the ones supporting us. And I don't know that we talk about that part enough as surgeons and the cost that it puts on the rest of the family. So hearing that made me remember that I need to do a better job of that.
She's like, oops, I forgot my husband is waiting for me in the car and I was supposed to be there an hour ago. Yeah, I felt like that's what was happening there, Ellie.
We're not robots. We do need breaks, like Carla is saying. It is not sustainable. And that other point you brought up, Michael, that we all went through general surgery. So we were traumatized there and saw how bad that was. And we think breast surgery is a day in the park. And so when we get these little stupid calls, we think it's no big deal. But it is a big deal. It does let us not disconnect. I'm going to make a goal for myself right now to do a better job disconnecting and actually take some time off because you need it. And I have no desire to be burnt out. So that's what I'm taking away.
And I'll just summarize what you two said is just make the first thing and have a plan for how to disconnect. I think one of the worst things about call is the waiting for it to happen. And if there is a defined time that it ain't going to happen, I think it certainly lowers the cortisol level for sure, allows us a little bit of a life. To our listeners throughout the breast community, we're so excited you've joined us on this journey, and we'll see you next time on the Next Breast Thing podcast.
We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of The Next Breast Thing, a podcast by the American Society of Breast Surgeons for the breast community.
Also, join the conversation on our Facebook group by searching the Next Breast Thing podcast group on Facebook.
Finally, the content within the Next Breast Thing podcast represents the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-host and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the American Society of Breast Surgeons.
Until next time, this is Carla.
Ellie.
Michael.
Susie.
And Susan. And always remember, if you're part of the breast community and can't seem to find the answers, this is the next breast thing.